Hi, and welcome to my 7th devlog on A Rift Between. It's been a few weeks since the last devlog, and things have been evolving at a rapid pace. As you could probably tell from the intro, the game has been massively overhauled since the last devlog in more than one way. Amusing has been working on some really great concept art and new sprites for the game, including this amazing space person and their droid friend. With these new sprites, we chose to bring the camera to a fixed perspective, closer to a traditional 2.5D game, instead of the third-person camera we were using. With changing the camera, the player movement had to be changed as well, so I made a new script for controlling the player and camera in a test scene to see how it would feel. Once we knew we were happy with the change, I swapped the character controller over in the main scene. Originally, the player had direct control of the aiming of his floating droid, like it was a weapon in a third-person shooter, and it would stay on his shoulder. With changing the camera, we had to come up with a new way for the player and droid to attack, as directly aiming the droid would not work the way it was set up. One of the ideas was to have the player shoot, so more like a top-down directional shooter, but with the side perspective. The other idea was to have the robot auto-attack things around the player along with the harvesting. The idea of having the robot float around is really fun, but with having it always do everything, it was not leaving a lot of things for the player to actually have control over. With thinking of a good way to give the player more interaction, I was drawn to a few games I had played, one being Pikmin on the GameCube and the other was Ghost Recon Wildlands. In both the games, you control an AI party where you give them commands and they would go out and do whatever they're assigned. Using an action wheel to give the commands is actually fairly intuitive and allows the player to have a ton of control of the situations that they're presented with, and so it felt like a great choice for this project. There was also a few ways we could have gone with how the robot handles the commands. Originally, I was thinking of having the droid float around the player and do the actions in that area, but doing this created a problem where the player did not have enough direct control of what the bot may be trying to attack or harvest, and the player needs to be able to direct the focus of the droid at things. So another idea was that the wheel would transition to a secondary wheel, where the player could choose a direction for the droid to go. This felt like the best option, so it was on to implementation. I used Krita to make a really quick wheel that had all the actions we wanted, along with directional arrows. I also made an image for each direction action being pressed and brought them into Unity. Once the images were imported, I made an empty object on the player canvas for the wheel and attached the script to it. Inside of the script, I gave it two arrays, one for the sprites of the main wheel and one for the directions. Then in Update, it checks if the player has already selected a choice or not, and if not, it waits for movement on any of the axes and assigns a value to a new function based on the input. This function stores this integer to be called later and changes the sprite to the directional wheel assigned for the choice, then flips a bool that is waiting in the update method. Once this bool is flipped, it then waits for the player input again and adds a value to another function where, depending on the value, it'll activate a bool in relation to the action that the player is wanting to use and sends the command to the droid. Up until now, the only times I tried to do anything with the nav mesh was on the jumpers earlier while working on this project and on a tutorial series I had tried to work through about making an action RPG a few months ago. I already knew how to set up simple pathing along a few points, or to let the object with the nav mesh agent have free roam with the nav mesh area, but since we wanted the player to be able to command the droid to different directions, I had to think differently with how to set up its pathing. I chose to make 4 game objects around the player, one for each direction, and inside of those objects are multiple transform references that I moved around for each side. When the player presses a direction on the wheel, it sends a command to a script on the droid telling it what direction to navigate to. Once the droid has the direction to go to, it changes its pathing to use one of the 4 arrays of the transforms. From there, it cycles through the transforms for that array until being told to reattach to the main navigation path. While this worked and the droid was going to the correct directions, there was a problem I had not foreseen. Because the transforms were attached around the player, the droid would move with the player along those references instead of staying in the area it was assigned to. But if I assigned the transforms to the droid, it would forever keep pathing outwards because while it moved, it would actually be moving the transforms with it. My solution was to add an instantiated object in the function where it sets the position. This object contains the 4 transforms along with all the paths for that droid. So once the player assigns a direction to the robot, it spawns this new object full of transforms below the droid and sets this new object as the navigation points. Originally, I was taking this object and turning its children into an array to call from, but this ended up becoming a huge headache and producing errors for close to a day while I was trying to find a solution. In the end, I chose to use a list instead, as it's really easy to add and remove things to it later. After I had both the harvesting and attacking working, I decided to be a good time for me to take a break for a couple of days and let myself recharge, but before I did, I also removed the HDRP from the project and brought in the Universal Render Pipeline instead. Making this change turned out to be a really good choice, as it was actually way easier to set up the lighting and have things look a little bit nicer in the scene. The next thing for the wheel is going to be the defending, but I'm still deciding the best way for the droid to defend attacks. I also need to read on ways to improve the pathfinding, because currently the droid is just moving in circles in the direction it's sent. I'm really happy with the progress made over the past few weeks. The project feels like it's really starting to take shape now. That's it for this log. Thanks so much for watching. Until the next log, take care.